Facility Advisory Committee. We have a quorum here, except Mr. Sullivan, our chair, is not here today. Dr. Nancy Merlino is here via technological means. So let's get started by Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. The next section is announcements. I have no announcements, so we'll move on to our presentations. Town staff has prepared some things for our meeting today, so I'll turn it over to Ryan and Sean.
Thank you, committee members and in our audience. So yeah, we didn't do a formal presentation in that PowerPoint, so I was just going to talk tonight. And I apologize, I'm getting a little bit of a cold, so I might sniffle, but I didn't think I was going to have that. I didn't have it when we set this agenda yesterday, so I apologize for that. So I want to start out talking just about overall water strategies and what's happening. And we've been talking about water resources in the town for a number of years. We've actually had several workshops with the Water Advisory Board, and actually going back to, I think, 2021, we actually had a workshop where we actually had CAP and an ADWR staff come out to the town and talk about that. So, water resources is a big issue for the town. It's facing the state overall with the pending cuts that are coming to the Colorado River. All I can relay on that is I don't know what's going to be the cuts are going to be still. There's actually a Colorado River Users Association that's occurring. That's the 7 basin states getting together. So hopefully there's more discussions on that. But something has to happen. Is at the deadline is probably next year. Usually the Bureau of Reclamation will announce the available water resources for the following year in about July, August of the following year. So we expect to hear something next year. What it'll be, the foreshadowing. What we're hearing as staff, what I pass along is what I've heard is a 20% cut in the Colorado River supplies to the town, to the state overall, which will then be a 20% cut to the municipal and industrial subcontracts, of which we are one on the CAP canal. We already have been told that if you recall, the town actually has 2 subcontracts for Colorado River water. There's our municipal and industrial, which is our more secure and are older. And then on top of that, a few years ago, we were able to secure some non-Indian agricultural NIA water resources. Ironically, as soon as we paid for that water and started requesting it, they said you can't get 100% of it. It's 386 acre feet. You can order 75%. And we've been successful in doing that. And Ryan really takes the lead on that. And we've been using that to actually help us get extra water recharged on our behalf and generating storage credits. Next year, we've already been forewarned or told that we can't order any of that water. So it's 0 NIA water for next year. And we assume moving forward for the next few years, it will be. It's not a reliable water supply. M&I water is what's the more reliable. And there was a recent meeting actually in October 30th, chaired by the Arizona Department of Water Resources. And it was really all the municipal and industrial subcontractors that were there, including the town got invited. And everybody's trying to really talk about the fact that they really are focused on trying to keep the municipal and industrial subcontracts whole, which then, and the least impact to them, but then the NIA is more flexible. So the NIA does give the town some benefits because it means we actually have capacity in the CAP canal. That's what drove us into thinking really seriously about the Harquahala discussion on, if the Central Arizona project doesn't have the water to fill the canal, can we use that transportation capacity in the canal and get new water into it? And that's really what really drove us into really thinking about the Harquahala project. And Harquahala is one of the groundwater import basins that has been defined by state statute. I think it was 1990 that they were put in place. There's 5 import basins, Harquahala being the largest of them. That there are some property owners who have some property. There's actually some other holdings out there. Scottsdale actually owns property out in the Harquahala Valley, and they have their own project. And there's another project development called Vidler Water that is tied up somehow in Scottsdale. I think it has to tie to some development agreements. So there's several projects that are out there, and they're trying to get access to the groundwater resources that are out in that basin. The basin was set aside for import into the Phoenix Active Management Area, which is we fall within the Phoenix Active Management Area. So it gave us a thought process of thinking, is it worth us pursuing and looking at that project? I can't tell too much about the project because there are some NDAs in place between the Harquahala Valley landowners, which is the agency that we would be purchasing our groundwater rights from. And we also have one in place that went on council a few weeks ago with EBCOR. But I can tell you some high-level stuff. So again, the arrangement that we have in place, so there's an assembly of lands out there called Harquahala Valley landowners. It's not the entire basin. It's just one portion of the basin. And they have worked through modeling exercises and through work on groundwater models have identified about 80,000 acre-feet of water a year is available underneath their lands to be mined for 100 years. So to date, Buckeye completed their purchase of just under 6,000 acre-feet last year in the project. And then Queen Creek did a purchase of 5,000 acre-feet. Queen Creek is looking to do 2 more purchases, one which will complete in February and the second one in July to get them up to a 12,000 acre-feet total into the project. So we're not going alone on this. And then on top of that, then that's giving us rights, effectively the paper water. So that by going into it, and what gets confusing is the way that they've structured the project is that they've set aside a subdivision and they've set aside a parcel. So the town is buying a parcel, which gives us right to the 1 acre parcel, which gives us right to the water resources underneath of it. And that's just how they structure it. So people get a little, it sounds a little odd. You're buying a parcel with land, we're buying 1 acre of land, but it buys you land in the project and gets us into it. And that's the great arrangement that we're looking at. And we have some earnest money in place, $50,000 with the option to complete the purchase. The earnest money is good through January 15th, I believe. If we at that point, then we lose that earnest money. And then if we proceed, then we're assuming we're proceeding with the purchase by February. I think February 15th is when we'd have to make the payment. And that's what we're really trying to sort through. It's a big lift for the town because it is $11.2 million to actually complete the purchase. But that gives us 500 acre-feet of per year for 100 years of groundwater rights. You'll hear discussion sometimes, well, is that water going to be available forever? We don't know, but that's what the modeling is showing right now. And that's what we're buying into or proposing to buy into. I don't want to go ahead of myself, get ahead of my skis. But, and then on top of that, then there's the idea of how do you get that groundwater to Cave Creek? I talked about the fact that we have a capacity in the Cap Canal with the NAA water, and then also with our municipal industrial water being cut. Effectively, that gives us volume in the Cap Canal for transmission of new water supplies. Other agencies like Queen Creek actually have very little M&I contract. They actually bought M&I a large tranche of NIA water to get access to the canal, but they're actually going to buy more water than they have capacity for. So they actually have to do a separate wheeling agreement, and the CAP is very cautious about that because they don't want people putting more and more water into this, and there's theoretical limits on that. But the town is safe because with our 20% cut, sadly, that'll give us some volume. And with our NA water not being reliable, we get some extra volume. So we have some transportation capacity in that to wheel water. But right now, Harquahala Valley landowners is who we'd make the purchase from to get access to their groundwater under their project. And then there's a common infrastructure project that's being discussed with EBCOR taking the lead as it's almost a private public partnership is what they're proposing. So they would take the lead on there's existing wells out there. They would construct the infrastructure necessary to utilize those existing wells to continue to draw the groundwater off. They actually have good water quality data. They know volume data out of those wells, and then bring them together. Where right now they're agricultural wells and feeding individual lots. They would actually bring the system together to combine them, do any necessary wellhead treatment. There's a couple of things out there that have come up. I think arsenic, and there's a couple other constituents. Do that treatment and then convey that common infrastructure volume up to the Cap Canal. It's about a 2-mile gap from the edge of the property across the I-10 up to the CAP Canal. And that's a proposal at this point. They haven't presented anything. We were actually supposed to have a meeting with them last week. They deferred it, and they said that we're going to meet with them in January for them to present that proposal of what it is. The scope of work, I have some ideas of because under the NDA, they've shared some documents with us, but I don't have cost. And that's a big unknown for the town is what is the ongoing cost of this water? We know what physical access to the paper water is, but what is it going to cost annually to get that water? That's a big unknown for the town to jump into.
Be going in with all the towns that are participating in this? or just with Cape Creek for that 2 year?
No, so the thought is that, again, what was presented to us is that they're not completely tied to the Harquahala Valley landowners, but EBCOR has proposed a project to do a common infrastructure project that would be giving anybody who buys access to that. There's actually a private developer who's also looking to buy right now and this is phase one. There's actually 3 phases. So ultimately, phase one is 240,000 acre feet or 24,000 acre feet annually of water resources. The project grows to 80,000 with phases 2 and 3. And then they are looking at proposing on a infrastructure, what they refer to as a common infrastructure. They would build it and then charge us back as a user, in effect. We don't know the breadth of that. We don't know I know technically the scope of what it is. I haven't seen any cost models or anything like that, how they'd want us to participate, whether it be an upfront large capital cost, or they do something, if you're familiar with how the CAP got built, that was actually funded by the federal government and was effectively a loan to the state to build the CAP canal. It took a decade plus to build that canal. And we pay that back through the user fees. We actually have 2 user fees for every, all our CAP subcontracts. There's a capital cost. So we're helping pay back the debt on the federal government loaning that money to the state to build it. I think there is some interest built into that. And the second component is actually the delivery costs. So for every acre foot of water, that's how we measure it in the water resource world, that we deliver down the canal, we have a cost for that. So there's 2 components that we pay for that. We don't know if that's going to be the model. We don't know. So until we know, so that's what we're trying to gather all that information together so that the town can make a decision on this. It's a, take it a step back, is we completed the master plan, and at a 20% cut, the town to our M&I water, and without any non-Indian agricultural water, the town is okay, and we are working on solutions to let us bridge that gap further with getting the other water strategy we're working on is the town has been successful in putting groundwater storage in the ground for a number of years. We've been having, when the NIA came through and the amount we were able to recharge, we've had close to 600, just over 600 acre feet for the last several years. We've been able to work with and work with the CAP to put into 2 of their facilities. There's the Agua facility, which is on the Agua River near Happy Valley Road. And there's a hieroglyphics facility, which is on North Surprise, is 163rd Avenue, north of Grand Avenue is where that facility is located. So we've been successful in generating a storage bank account for the town. So as the cuts come, what we've been really working on is, I don't want to say by October 27, I've run out of water and, stop using water. We're working on what we call midterm solutions, a 3 to 5 to 7 year solution. We do believe at a 20% cut, we're getting towards that 7+ year solution, that if we get access to those storage credits, that bridges the gap for us. So it gives us time to develop into what is a long-term solution. Harquahala is one. The other project that the town is involved in is the Bartlett Dam project. It's officially known as the Verde Valley Reservoir Mitigation Sedimentation Reservoir Project. That's quite a mouthful. If you're familiar with the Verde River, the 2 dams on the Verde River operated by Salt River Project are actually the Horseshoe Dam, which is the upper dam, the lower dam, which is Bartlett Dam. Horseshoe Dam has an issue that it is filling with sedimentation, and functionally they cannot remove that sedimentation just by flowing the dam. The outlets underneath that would allow them to move that sedimentation no longer function, so they're backing up sedimentation. So they're losing storage capacity behind Horseshoe Dam. That's what drove the project. They looked at options. Can they dredge that material out? Where can they put that material and all that? And after a lengthy process, the project decided that the best solution was actually to go to Bartlett Dam, raise Bartlett Dam, and gain that extra capacity back that they're going to lose from Bartlett Dam or Horseshoe Dam being filled in. And in addition to that, they said, well, if we're raising the dam, why don't we make it taller, get extra capacity, and see if other people participate in. So we are one of the members in that project. We're one of 24 members in that project, I believe it is. Salt River Project, a lot of municipalities who have asked for some of that storage capacity in the new dam structure that will be built. So that project gives us some access to that new stored water. You ask, how do we get Salt River Project water? Because Verde River goes in the Salt River, comes to. So there's another project that we're not elected to participate in. It's called the SCIF project. So right now, if you're not familiar with it, there is a way to get Salt River or CAP water into the Salt River canal system. There's actually an interconnect site. There's not the reverse. There's no interconnect site from the Salt River. It actually has to be pumped to get into the Cap Canal. So that's another project. I don't think the town needs to participate in that, and we haven't at this point because we've actually worked on leveraging our relationship with the city of Phoenix. We have a contract with the city of Phoenix to divert, treat, and deliver our CAP allocations to us. We've had good preliminary discussions saying if we continue with the project in the Bartlett Dam, instead of us trying to figure out doing exchange swaps with downstream users and saying if we get water, we're going to give that to Tucson or some farmers down in Pinell County, is that Phoenix has tentatively agreed and good discussions with them to say they would treat that water for us. So we'd amend the IGA that we have in place, which is limited to divert, treat, and deliver CAP water, and they're open to the discussion of amending that to do divert, treat, and deliver SRP water to us. If you're not familiar with it, City of Phoenix has 3 water treatment plants that actually have access to treat water on this SRP canal system. So we think that's a better solution for the town if we stay in that project to work and leverage our relationship with Phoenix. And we'd actually have 2 IGAs in place, and we'd place orders with them to divert, treat either our CAP water or our SRP waters if we continue with that through the interconnect site that we're completing down at Carefree Highway and Cave Creek Road. So that's a good option for us. That project, like every project we're seeing on the water side, has issues with it. The costs have gone up since, if people remember the presentation where SRP staff came out and talked to us. I think at that time the cost proposal was 1.1 or 1.2 or $3 million or $1 billion. Sorry, to be. The current cost estimate is $3.7 billion on the project. And as a project participant, we were just notified that I forget the total volume of water that's being proposed by raising the dam. I think it's 110 feet in additional height on the dam. We broke up the amount of the water available to that, but the project team was then notified. The Bureau of Reclamation has been a partner in the project to date. What they've done is actually funded the feasibility and design phase project. That's the relationship with the SRP and the project team members and Bureau of Reclamation. Bureau of Reclamation has now formally notified the project team that they want half the water for participating moving forward into construction.
Oh,
yeah. So what does that mean? That means effectively, again, we thought there was going to be numbers I should have written down. I apologize for the cold. As if we say it's 100,000 acre feet, they wanted 50,000, but it's actually more like, I think it was close to 200,000. They wanted 100,000. So right now the project members are actually going through a distribution project of the different requests that everybody has made. The town only requested 1,000 acre feet of storage. We showed a need for over 5,000 as far as our system grows. So what they're proposing does, and we're actually the smallest participant in the project, that they wouldn't touch our 1,000 acre feet. We'd stay whole. Some of the largers like Phoenix, they'll lose most of their, not most of it, but a bigger tranche of their water. So they're doing that right now. And we're doing one-on-one meetings with SRP to get a release agreement on what the new numbers will be. They've presented it to the team. Again, I focused on the Cave Creek numbers, and they were saying, well, Cave Creek, you're so small, we'll just keep you at 1,000 acre feet of storage. The larger ones are losing it, so now they're having that discussion. That does drive the cost, and now you're dividing that cost, which the federal government, $3.7 billion federal government's going to pick up half of that, pay for that, and then now we have a number that we're now splitting between the team members of what that water will cost us.
what is the BLM going to do with the extra water?
Bureau of Reclamation. Is that
Reclamation.
They told us in their presentation that they actually have needs. They have their own non-Indian ag subcontracts with things like Indian tribes that they actually are responsible to keep whole. So they would be keeping their customers that they already have subcontracts with whole with the water resources off the project. So yeah, they have their whole list of people they presented to us, and some of them were some tribes, and they said that they actually, that's something I learned that was new. In the NIA allocations, there's actually 2 tiers. So we're actually the lower, less reliable tier, or the upper tier is actually the federal tiers. So they were actually trying to backstop those federal contracts and their requirements. That's why they said they needed it. Why they took this long, I'm not sure. That's that conclusion. But now the team's been formally notified of that. The Bartlett Dam is kind of unique in that when you ask for 1,000 acre feet of storage capacity, that means now that's the amount of water storage we have behind there. But in the average year, we can only rely on, I think it's 268 acre feet, and that's the average annual. So it fluctuates quite a lot on the Birdie River if you look historically at the flows. So we can only rely on it's under 300, I think it's 268 acre feet a year, but in good wet years like this year, they had good rains and actually there's a lot of water. We might be closer to 1,000 acre feet. So the amount of water we get off that project will fluctuate annually. So when people ask me how much is it going to cost us per acre foot, I'm saying, well, on a good wet year or an average year, so it does fluctuate. The numbers that I came up with is right now on a good wet year, if we get access to 1,000 acre feet, it's about $11,000 per acre foot for us to participate in the project. If it's a dry year, it's closer to 40,000. So it's going to vary, and that's where the variability is a hard thing for us to try and manage moving forward. But that's something that we have to understand on that project if we stay in it. And the other nuance in the Bartlett Dam project is that it's helping backstop the lost water, say some of the municipal industrial subcontract, but it's not meant for growth. What I mean by that is, if a developer came in and wanted to get a certificate of assured water supply from us, that water cannot be used to support that certificate. The town's unique in that I don't think we're gonna, we just did the arrangement with Cahaba Springs and renegotiated their development agreement, and they had 124 acre feet for their 260 lot development. That subcontracts are already in the books. We've cataloged those. Ryan did a really great effort a couple of years ago working with the Arizona Department of Water Resources and going through all the certificates. That was a big unknown. I think we had like 100 records that we had to go through and sort them out. And it gets confusing because what happens is someone will go out, they'll make a master development, a final plat of development that gets its water certificate. And as individual lots get sold off before they're developed, then there's a new certificate issued. So tracking all that down, we had subdivisions that had 3 or 4 subs, and then in a matter of where you weren't overcounting it. It was Ryan did a great job of working with the ADWR staff, and it was done during COVID of all things, and they actually had to go out and scan most of the documents on our behalf, and then they went through it, and then we worked really closely with them to figure out what is our commitments. We have a good number there. That's actually been taken and put into our master plan, which we wrapped up in 24. So we have really good accounting of that. But
Sean, that the developer is providing this water?
No, I'm just saying that our cataloging of what we currently have, our current commitments, contractual commitments, we clean that up very, very clearly. So moving forward, pardon?
180,000 to Cahaba Ranch.
124, 28, I think is what their certificate is. Acre feet is what their certificate is.
And that's a commitment by the town?
We consider that a contractual commitment at this point. So when we looked at the master plan, we looked at those certificates. We looked at the certificates that still had lots still to develop in them. And then we looked at, there was only 5 certificates, Nava being one, Hidden Ranch behind Town Hall, that another one that had no development on them. So we mapped that all out. Taking all those together, that's 800, and at the time in 2024, that's 830 acre feet of water. Future commitments that we have contractual obligations through certificates of assured water supplies that the town has, and or the previous water company signed off on as they were working with developments to allow them to get a final plat. So that's something we watch for, because obviously that's a contractual commitment that we have. Then when we start looking at our water balance, what are we doing now? We're not using all of our water allocation. We're in this position right now for the last several years that we've been able to and successfully be able to take our unused water allocations on the Colorado River and actually recharge that to generate long-term storage capacity. Those lines diverge a few years out as development occurs. These developments won't occur all at once. So that's the trick, is how quickly will they be absorbed? How quickly will they want water? And we did all that through the master plan, try to figure that out. And that is actually some work that we've been working on. And I should have brought the charts. I apologize for that. Brad Hill, we actually have our water resource consultant, has really been taking those and mapping it out. And putting all the different layers on. We presented it to council. I think we presented to the advisory board too. It's sort of a trend going out 30 years, or to 2030, I think is what we're looking at, 2040. No, it's 2040 right now, to see where we're going to be, where the lines converge. So it really shows, when do we need new water resources?
Well, with the uncertainty of the water and the almost certain cut coming, shouldn't we be renegotiating or nullifying all these certificates of water supply? I mean, it doesn't sound like it's in the town's best interest to let it go. And how can you let it go? Because the conditions are totally different.
Great question. Again, that's going back to current state law. The town has platted subdivisions, In order to get a platted final plat approved, you need to have a designation, or since 1980, you actually had to have a certificate of assured water supply. That's where they came from. So effectively, the Department of Water Resources and Department of Real Estate say, what is your water supply before we sign off on the subdivision? And that's the process that we're in. Yeah, you bring up a great point, and I've actually raised it with the issue of when we had the meeting with ADWR, saying if you're going to reduce the amount of water we're available via the subcontracts, then what does that do to all those certificates? And it comes back as a bit of a blank statement. It's sort of like at this point, the understanding is that we as a water provider have to make them whole. We've had hard, serious discussions about how would that impact us. In 2021, we had a really hard decision to make in Desert Hills because of the decline in the groundwater production out there. Desert Hills was a system developed on groundwater. They didn't have any surface water. Unlike Cave Creek, which started on groundwater and saw the future and got a surface water subcontract and then built the infrastructure to get access to that. Desert Hills didn't have this. When the town purchased the system, they had no surface water rights. They had the groundwater and then the production wells. The wells have dropped in capacity about by half. So in 21, we made the decision to say, that it's not fair that Desert Hills, we continue to allow new accounts to develop out Desert Hills, but we had to contractually and legally put the out saying there was still 2 certificated subdivisions out in Desert Hills that had a contract. So the 2021 water resource policy says we're not going to add new accounts in Desert Hills unless it's statutorily or contractually required. That was any outstanding little water agreements that were out there and the 2 subdivisions that were out there we had to account for so that we weren't legally sued because there's been an obligation made. Can we go back on those? And then is there a discussion that as water becomes more restrictive, and we say, hey, we can't serve that next meter, we can't allow that subdivision that next meter. That's a discussion we're actively having, and there's no real case law on it. We're breaking new ground right now, but it's a good point. But it's been brought up with meetings with ADWR, and they're not really being proactive about it. And I don't know if that could be because of just how the legislation's written, and it's really coming back to us as a municipal provider. So we're going to have to deal with that a little bit. So it does scare us a little bit, but that's why we're trying to frame of how much do we need to grow and where do the lines cross, and what do we need to buy those tranches of water to keep us full. So,
Sean, when did Cave Creek acquire the surface water rights?
Well, we bought it from Cape Creek Water Company. They bought it in the 80s.
Okay.
Sometime in the 80s is when they made their purchase, because it was 1990 that they actually built the pipeline to the water treatment plant. So they had the surface water paper right available to I forget at the volume. It wasn't. There was actually a couple of acquisitions that they made. I can't remember the original volume. It's like 12 or 1,400 acre feet of water that they bought first, and then they grew that. Bought the system in 2007. It was 2606 was our number. Remember that number. And then now after the separation of the Carefree customer, we're now down to 2,228. That's our new number. That's our per acre feet per year of municipal industrial CAP subcontract water. Again, now that looks like it will drop by 20% is our best estimate right now. And then again, we're not in an immediate need, but we do need to make, and we have been working. That's why I wanted to present to the committee tonight. We have been making good headway on getting access to things like our storage credits. We're hopeful in January/February we'll be bringing the first of the IGAs in place. We're working with 2 West Valley cities to actually get access, who actually can access the water from the recharge basins where we have storage credits. And we're structuring the agreement such that, and you might not be aware of it, the state on the total, there's actually been what's called the Arizona Water Banking Authority. So they've been banking water on behalf of municipal industrial subcontractors over 20 years now. So they have over 4 million acre feet of water. So the 2 agreements that we're working on allows us, is structured such that it's not just the credit account of storage credits that we put in the ground, which is, it'll be 1,000 acre feet. Yeah, really, definitely. That there's actually get access or be able to utilize that to get access to Arizona Water Banking Authority credits. We don't know how those credits are going to be divvied up, the 4.2 million acre feet of water. The Arizona Water Banking Authority has not made a determination of how they're going to deal with that post-2027 allocation and distribute but we're assuming we're going to get some of that because they were recharging on our behalf. So, and then we've got the 2 agreements structured says that we can add into it. What'll actually happen, just technically, is we'll get the water from the Arizona Water Banking Authority, and the agreements are structured. The Water Banking Authority actually has credits stored in the hieroglyphics in our FRIA facility. We'll ask to have the credits in those 2 facilities transferred to our names, and then work it through these IJs, be able to access them physically to get wet water to put into the canal. So I think it's good. The first agreement, we're looking at like a 7-year time frame that's renewable. The other agencies, they're willing to work with us. That's a great thing that these other large municipalities are willing to work with the town to help us. They understand that, in a lot of cases for them, it's a mid to long-term solution because they have more diversified water portfolios. And while they can weather the 20% cut or even a 25% cut, they realize at some point they can't. So they're looking for it out. For the town, it's getting to be real, but with the solutions we're talking about, access to the water credits, we now have the capital program funded this year, so we'll start working on reactivating the 3 wells in the town core and getting them back online to give us access to that resource. And then obviously our conservation outreach is what we've talked about at the committee before about of how do we extend the current resources by having the current customers use less, and things like the AMI metering system, automated metering infrastructure, which basically is our hourly read system, as a great resource for customers to use. And I think you guys we've talked ad nauseum about it, but I can't say enough about, the information we're getting out of that system is great. And we're trying to now, with the capital program that we got in place for the next 2 fiscal years, we've requested the funds to actually start rolling that in Desert Hills and upgrading the meters in Desert Hills. We pick up some Desert Hills meters, mostly along the peripheral, the boundary point along 24th Street. We go in a little bit. We pick up some with some of the collector sites we have up. We have to go in and do some work to retrofit and add external antennas on those meters so that they actually get a stronger signal out of it and put more collector sites up. But we're thinking after some what they call propagation studies, some exercises that they've done theoretically to show what they think we can get out of it, especially with the Phoenix site that we're working on. It's called Mount Gillen. That should help us get almost 2/3 of the Desert Hills meters picked up on the system. Once we get that collector site and once we retrofit with internal and external antennas, so that's a good win for us pretty quickly. And, the goal will be to get, the goal is to get all the customers onto that system so that we can both see the information and they can see the information too, because we're hopeful that will change people. They can find leaks earlier, deal with issues earlier, and then start looking at things like changing water usage patterns as we get through like the rate study right now. And we, what's being proposed, and that'll be coming forward in January, is to create a new lowest water tier. We're currently, our lowest water tiers 10,000 gallons per month per billing period. We're going to do a new tier. What's being proposed is a 4,000, and to help people who are being very water conscious. And on the upper tier side, we had 10, 20, 30, is it 30 to 40?
30 to 50.
30 to 50, and then above 50. The 50 is going to be reduced down to 40. So it's the high water users. Somebody within 40,000 gallons will be the more financially penalized on that point. So it's all coming together. And our goal with that, changing that rate structure, is again, focus on conservation, getting people to think more about what this is going to cost as the town has to deal with friction and hopefully change patterns.
Yeah.
I think Nancy had a question.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I agree with the comment that was made, and that is about growth. And if we have to meet the subdivision requirements legally, and it sounds like we don't know for sure if we do, because now there's a change. So I think that should be looked at extremely. And the other thing that I keep hearing, so you're saying that we are going to pay, I think it's 11 point something million for our access to the water, right, out in Harquahala?
The town is facing the decision is to purchase, I call it the paper water.
Okay.
There's access to 5,000 acre feet a year for 100 years of water out there, but it doesn't give us physical access. And that's not what Harquahala Valley landowners is giving. They're giving us that water right.
Okay, so that's for the water right, and that's all we had put in for the possible extra fee that we had come up with that didn't get voted in yet. But what but it's very clear to me in listening to this, we have no idea how much it's going to cost to get that into the canal on a yearly basis, correct?
And that's why, you know, as staff, we're very nervous and a little disappointed. You know, we do have an NDA in place with EBCOR, and EBCOR is proposing at this point to build a common infrastructure project
Right.
with the participants. And again, they're not, they're the ones that are moving the project forward. There's no agreement with us. If we buy that water, we don't have to go in with EBCOR. It makes sense. Small agency that makes sense. We got to figure out who's going to do that, but they're proposing to participate. That we don't know what the number are, and that's a big.
Right. And you said they're going to know that in January sometime, but we have to make our decision by January 15th, whether we want our 50,000 that we put in to go forward or not.
Yeah, the meeting that was supposed to occur last week for us to get a presentation on the project and their proposal was delayed for a month, which puts us against a lot of deadlines, which makes me.
Okay. And so the other thing that I'm hearing, which we have dealt with, and that's why the council decided not to go with the water resource fee, is you're asking all of the current users to pay for all of the future people moving here. And I just think that is so wrong. And I know there's a couple of people on this committee that are kind of questioning the same thing. But, and we already on that graph are what, the highest in the state? Is that correct on our water fees?
Well, I should say we're up in the top tiers. And let me just correct what was being proposed in the water resource fee. And I've heard this from the council, the mayor, is that they don't think it's fair that the current users pay for this. The funding problem we have right now is that we haven't been collecting a water resource fee to date. So we don't have a pot of money set aside for this. So we'll have to figure out how we can fund this. So what's being proposed was actually to potentially take out a loan to pay for that. And then how we pay it back would be then that would be structured in the we have one issue is that we will lose enough water that at some point the existing customers have to participate in the project. And in the future, water resources, because it will be short. But the fairness is that the future users should really be paying the bulk of that. That means we have to go through, and currently the impact fees that we charge when a new meter is set do not include any of those.
Correct. And they don't include it. You don't include it for future. So like if one of these new people comes on, you're collecting a fee when they get their meter, but actually maybe they should pay $200 more a month for the rest of the way they have it. And I'm not hearing that. Because
the last time we did an update to the impact fees was actually 2022.
right.
Water resource fees. At that time, we didn't have any of these numbers there was some early discussions about at that time, should we as staff and the consultants, should we start looking at developing a water resource fee, but without knowing what the charges are, you can't really go backwards and set to an unknown.
Right. And I agree with you, but all I keep hearing is that the current town people, and many people have been here many, many years, are going to take the brunt of getting more water, which is extremely expensive. And we don't even know how expensive, and it's for future. And I disagree with all that. I mean, and also we've proven how high our water bills are compared to everyone else. So I just think we just need to bring that up. You know, again, you talk about conservation, and the other thing our committee brought up, which nobody listened to when we presented it at the last meeting, the council meeting, and I think it should be addressed for this next year, is we recommended fees at 50,000, 60,000, 70,000 that were an increased fee structure. And they listened to it, but nobody even said a word. So I'm going to go back to what we said, and I think that should be back on the table for this next year, not just thrown to the wind. So maybe my committee members can, comment on where they think we're headed.
Nancy, I definitely remember talking about that at the previous meeting, and we were feeling a little bit left out because the water rate structure was basically done before we got involved. But we could have used those extra rates for the high users to pay for some of the water resource fee.
Right, and they still could. I mean, why is that off the table? I feel like it was off the table. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Sean needs to tell me it's not off the table. But it seemed like it was. But when can we put it back on the table?
We're going to meet the February date for the water increase. It pretty much is off the table right now. They would have to delay that in order to go through the process again and add those extra tiers.
So why couldn't they do that, Sean?
Well, right now, because we've actually done the notice of intent to raise the rates, and there's a statutory requirement. I believe it has to be noticed 90 days before. So if we do that, we basically reset that clock and we out. So we've run into this before. We did the last time we did the rate increases, it was 22. Prior to that was 2020. And yeah, and I think as Sherry's brought it forward before, is that, this isn't the only time we're going to have a bite of this apple, but we needed to do an update because there were some structural issues we were trying to correct. There's been some direction. The town's utilities have not been fully supported enterprise funds. So they're being subsidized. So that was one thing we're trying to look at. How do we get towards that? And then also we actually were dealing with the new capital program that applied from the water utility master plan, the new infrastructure project. The water resource component, it's not gone away, but there needs to be work. We need to figure out how much it's going to cost in order to back in to generate the water user fee. It is a cash flow issue for the town. Coming up with $10.2 million, we have not set aside money to do that to date. So that would be, we got to loan it. But then the thought of paying it back is really going back to, we want the future users to really participate in that water. So that discussion has not gone away. We need to go through that process. And that's really the impact fee setting process. So the thought is that we get the rates in place. We have a structural issue right now where we have to, the rates that we set in 22, in fact, I think in Cape Creek and Desert Hills, we adopted 6 years worth of rate increases, but the last couple of years was zero. There was no rate increases, even though we adopted a 6.
Okay, so if we continue with the current one, once that's approved, can we put in a new one again with the 90 days to increase for the 50, 60, 70, 80?
Yeah, well, the thought would be that we would start again because of timing. We ran into this in 2020. We want to avoid it. We actually did the rate increase, and it became effective in August of a month in a high water use month, and we took our hits for that. That's something we try to avoid. So you either try to do it in the fall or the spring during the lower months, so people can adopt the new rates a little bit better. So, but yeah, this is just an update we're doing now, and there will be follow up to this.
But that's what I'm saying. Can we then put this on the table to get a true follow-up? Because I feel like no one was listening to us. And I think we have a very good idea of making the people that are, at the very continue up, that needs to go up. They should not be paying the same as the 40,000. So can we do that? Can we, if continue the one you have? You said you have to have 90 days, then it goes into effect. Then when is the next time we can propose this next, this committee, recommended?
Council makes the decision, and they've made their decision.
Yeah.
They heard us, and we can go back to them, but we can't hold it up.
Well, I don't think they heard us because they only blessed what was on that paper that was already given by Sherry.
It sounds to me like there's a lot of unknowns right now at this stage, and
Right.
or that you can gather those unknowns and be more definitive on what needs to happen and educated decisions and not snap decisions as going forward is probably our best solution.
Right. And I agree with that. And then I agree with that on this Harkahala. I think the fact that we're actually thinking of January 15th of saying yes to $11 million, and we have absolutely no idea how much it's going to cost to get that water to us. I mean, that just makes no economic sense.
Where is this basin at?
It's all the way out by the Rio Verde nuclear plant.
Yeah, it's past Palo Verde. I'll probably share these maps. The property is largely centralized on 455th Avenue.
It's way, way away. So, I mean, I just feel a person, if we were a business, a true business, we would not be spending $11 million on something we have no idea how to get that water to us. And a real, not just a guess. So you're saying that, who is it out there that's gonna build it? What's the name of the place?
They haven't given us the information. So yeah, we are going. There is an unknown, and that is making us uncomfortable. We signed on to the project and did an NDA with them to at least allow us to open up the books, see what's going on, to look at what's going on. We've had discussions with Queen Creek and Buckeye to figure out what they're doing. Both those agencies are looking at this as more of a long-term water solution for them to allow.
Right. But aren't we doing the same thing? Because you're wanting it.
Yeah, and again, it does help us with the, again, because now that I think, because when we actually did the NDA with them, we had started the discussions with the West Valley cities on these exchange agreements. So, we were working multiple solutions at once. So we've had the NDA in place with the Harquahala actually since the spring.
Right.
And then we've been working on these other sub agreements to find out what's going on as we've been trying to figure out, get more clarity on what the cuts will be. So,
And then also a real figure then on how much an acre foot will be from that basin. We don't have any idea yet.
to get physical access. So all we know is we've been offered the terms for the sale of the water resource right, the paper water.
And that's forever. We don't have to pay that again. We don't have to pay more millions in the future.
For $11.2 million, or to 11.2, I think what it is, for 100 or 500 acre feet is what they've offered to us of water for 100 years, assured water supply. What the terms are right now. So that, again, there is the unknown, and we knew that going into it. We were hopeful that the meeting that was supposed to occur last week had occurred, because then I'd have more information. I know a little bit about the project, but
Discussing today, Desert Hills.
that's the next item. So I was trying to give you guys a briefing on where we're at with everything. So yeah, obviously Harquahala is a big one because it's coming ahead. And then, the Harquahala decision is, and I can relay that part of that was what drove the invitation for bidders for Desert Hills, because the question came up of, while looking at Harquahala and the purchase of Harquahala and the need for that water, if the town were able to sell the Desert Hills customers, it's the town bought the system. It's a system actually itself. So that we bought the system at the same time, just actually a few months before we completed the condemnation of Cape Creek Water. The end of 2006, I think, is when we bought the common shares of Desert Hills and started taking over the operation of the facility. But those, I look at them as customers, and Ryan looks the same way. Ties their water customers, but they're also non-residents. And then we bought that system, and we've been now, because of the declining in the groundwater table out there, because they didn't have surface water, right, they've actually had to rely more and more on the
Right.
Numbers. Year 2024, I think it was 560 acre feet of CAP water that we had to treat and deliver to keep the system wall on top of the wells out there. This past summer we had issues with two of the wells in Desert Hills where both of them failed. It was just a pump issues, which meant we had to put more water into them temporarily. The good thing is we've done some system improvements that actually allowed us to do that. It did have some impact to some of our users on Cloud Road, which really is forcing the issue of a second connection to Desert Hills. But the real broad frame is, and the discussion came up, and the staff has been asked, so there is an invitation for bids out on the street to ask private utilities if they're interested in purchasing the Desert Hills system.
And when did that go out?
It went out last week.
Sean, can I back up a little bit to the previous discussion on the Harquahala? I had 3 comments, suggestions. The first one, to the point of higher level tiers to help pay for the Harquahala system. I'm still in favor of that, and I would suggest maybe as a compromise to look at doing that at the beginning of next year when we get cut by the 20. There's logic for doing it at that point. And even though there might be a time lag between when the first money goes out towards the wife, at least we'll have something in place, and it gives us time to kind of build the case for that. The second thing is for anybody with an assured water supply, and we're not supplying right now, I think that we should charge them an extra amount, skin in the game, a portion of this 11.2 or $4 million, for that water, because it doesn't exist today. It's just phony baloney. So if we can't legally change that and get out of that, then what can we do instead? Make them pay, for their fair share of what we have to do to supply that water.
I agree, but I don't know the legality of how you can do that.
Yeah, and in fact, actually, this to get a framing, we just did the revised and restated development agreement with Cahaba Springs. We wrote into that agreement because they're not current customers that they need to complete the infrastructure requirements that they need to do. But we put in there that at the time that they get water meters for lots out there, they have to pay all fees that are due at the time at the meter. So they would have to, if we go through an impact fee study and set any water resource fees, at that time, the new customers in Cahaba Springs would pay for that. And that we've already thought that through. So we have that development
Yeah.
agreement in place. The other certificate areas, we don't have, I can't recall if we have development agreements in place. We have to go take a look at that. Usually they have a defined frame.
Yeah, I'm
Under the
talking about a premium over and above whatever is in the rate structure for the developer to pay.
Oh,
Yep.
we do it typically as an impact fee as the individual customers get put on. Again, it's not a customer, it's basically someone's developed a lot and then they go to develop that or sell that lot and they actually pay for a meter to get set on that lot. That's when we collect.
Yeah, but it's not very much.
right,
Depends on the size. Right now, 1-inch meter in Cave Creek, if it has sewer, is
6,000 or something. That's nothing. I'm sorry, but that does not cut what we're talking about. Those fees are so minimal compared to what we're looking at for our next 10 to 50 years of water in this town.
by state statute. You can only charge fees that are justifiable. So you have to, once we know some numbers, we can do those calculations. The fees that we increased in 2022, the capacity fees went up quite significantly because we had the numbers on the infrastructure costs that had been spent and was being forecasted to be spent on the system. So now, since we have the 24 master plan, we can look at that, the water infrastructure cost and revise those rates and look at, once we hone in and Commissioner Robert had a good discussion, is that once we can fine tune the numbers, we can go right into it and start developing those fees. But statutorily, we just can't set a fee saying we want
Right.
justify that. So we need to go through the exercise. We need to get that clarity to come up with that. Yeah, I feel very uncomfortable with the fact that, we are facing a decision. It was in the spring that we signed the NDA to start discussions on RPA.
Well, can you get that changed or push back because there's, no way of knowing the delivery fees?
Want to do that, and there's discussions. That's had several meetings with the council actually in January being scheduled to have just that same discussion. So technically, there's been some discussions with the landowners. We're going to meet with council. You got to make a decision by the 16th. And what happens at the 16th is we lose our $50,000 in earnest money we put down. And then in effect, at that point, the thought is that you're moving forward with the final purchase. We still don't have to, that doesn't mean after the January 15th, 16th, that we actually have to complete the purchase. We can still pull out, but we are considered at that point in default. And then contractually, what that means is that we lose the $50,000, but does the town want to be in default? So yeah, we're at a tight time frame. So that is all the discussions that we're actually having at staff levels. That's why we've met and mapped out several meetings that you guys will be seeing come forward with the council directly between executive sessions and just open sessions to try and discuss what the next steps are. And we're taking this very seriously. It's a huge undertaking. I wish we had more breathing space. I don't know if we'll get it. We have to assume that we're not going to get it. So then what's our conclusion moving forward? And is this the best purchase? We went into it with our eyes open, knowing that there was a lot of unknowns, hoping that we get some clarity. I will honestly admit I'm miffed that I can't have clarity because the meeting that was didn't occur.
Right. Okay. So then going back to the fact that a week ago you put out that, does anyone want to buy our water system?
Correct. Now it's sort of the second agenda item. So if you can allow me a few moments, I can talk about that. So when we found out the cost of the Harquahala water, a discussion occurred of, again, we're buying 500 acre feet of water for I keep messing this up. I think it's $11.2 million. I apologize. So the discussion came out of, we're sending 560 acre feet to Desert Hills annually. If we didn't have to send that water to Desert Hills, could we defer a future water resource? 500 acre feet doesn't make us whole. We had to, I'll make that, bring that context, that even if we had our full M&I allocation and our NA allocation, as the commitments, as the subdivisions grow out, and as individual lots connect to the system, we would still need new water resources in the town. So we have to face that. And that's actually what's mapped out in the master plan. There's like 830 acre feet of committed water in the certificated areas. On top of that, there's about 500 plus acre feet of water for properties that could connect to the system that aren't connected to the water system within 500 feet of a distribution line. If we expand that out to anybody in the town that has a single family lot that wants to connect, that's over 800 acre feet. So those are discussions we have to have. How far can we grow the system? So what the discussion came about is, the numbers sort of matched out. We're buying 500 acre feet of water to help secure us for the next maybe 10 years or not. But can we defer that by not having to getting that water resources? And that's been an ongoing discussion since I've been here at the town, and actually prior to my starting with the town, of if we bought Desert Hills, can we still support Desert Hills by continuing to put water resources towards Desert Hills? Can we get those water resources back? And that's what precipitated and drove the idea of the invitation for bidders to see if there's any private sector agencies that are willing to take that on. What's put in the solicitation is that they're looking to buy a water system without the town's water resources. We want that water resources back, so we want to get to see if they're going to pay what they'll pay for us, to see if that's viable, makes sense for the town. There's still a little bit more debt to pay off, so we still have some existing loans from 2007 and 8 to pay off for a few more years. We got to factor that in. We have to factor in the impacts of the town. As I indicated before, I don't see Desert. I look at it as their customers, and they're how do I keep them with water and work with them? But I have to also look at the standpoint that it is a separate group of customers, and then they are not in the town's municipal limits, and they're a separate water company. So can we divest of them? But because we have the funds intertwined, and part of Desert Hills, they actually I can't remember if it was 2020 or 2022, we started charging a differential rate. They actually are paying a different rate than Cave Creek customers. And we also went to the fact that they're actually helping participate in Cave Creek's capital program by helping with the bulk water purchase. So we've intertwined them together. So part of our analysis is, while we've got the invitation for bids out on the street, we actually have two other analyses that are going on. One is that for the town to sell municipal property, which is what Desert Hills is considered, we actually have to have an appraisal done. Per state statute, we can't sell Desert Hills for less than appraised value. So we actually have a project to do an appraisal of what is Desert Hills worth. What's interesting is that how do you factor in if we want to take our water resources back? How do you sell a water company that doesn't? Yeah, so that's interesting. And we actually have a good national firm that's actually helping us do this. Reptelis is on board to do that.
So, without the water resources is basically without the water, right? Because it's basically Desert Hills relies on Town of Cave Creek water that's coming up Cave Creek Road from the CAP. So that's your water. So Desert Hills now is just a system sitting there. So why would someone want to buy that without having water available to run the
Isn't that
system?
linked up to
Or
Anthem
am I?
way back in 2000, early 2000s?
There's an emergency interconnect. It was an agreement in place in either started in 2005 or 2006. So there was an overland pipe that connected Desert Hills in an emergency situation. It went to the Corporation Commission, was approved prior to our purchasing of it, and it was
Was that
placed.
Pickler?
Yeah, it was actually Arizona American.
In Anthem right now.
American Water.
American Water ran the system at the time. And then ironically, when the town bought Cave Creek Water and Desert Hills, we actually had a contract with American Water to actually run it until we staffed up about a year or 18 months later, where we actually then stopped that operational contract. So it's interesting, the tie to connection. And then, take a step further, when the town bought the system for Desert Hills, there was a thought of taking that overland temporary pipe and making a permanent connection between the two. What I've recently asked the question about that, and then what I was able to find out is that that was the town's thought process. But we were told by American Water, who was running the Anthem system, that they had excess physical capacity to help out until 2010. So the town had to make the decision: do we invest money? It was a 2.2 mile, 12-inch pipeline project to make a permanent connection for something that was only going to last for a few years, and they were going to then say we don't have the water resources, the physical capacity. That's actually was told to the town. It shows up in the there's some found some letters, and so found it's actually in the master plan, the 2007 master plan. It's actually documented that was the case, that they were notified that was the case. So the town had to make a quick decision, and the decision was, okay, we're going to spend our resources in Cave Creek, improve the water treatment plant, rebuild the Neary site, add reservoir capacity at Rockaway, do all that to help make sure that Cave Creek could support water to Desert Hills. So they had to refocus really quickly. So you bring us some really great points. There's a history out there.
Right.
But really the impetus of doing an IFB, which was released last week, was to see if there is interest. And you bring a great point is, is there going to be interest? Because in the IFB, we say we want the water resources back. We can't continue to support that. So does anybody else, and there is a thought process out there, or a thought that there's some water companies that have stored water resources that they could offer up, whether they'd come to us and say, okay, we don't want your water, but we want you to treat and divert our water through your system. Now we can set a rate similar to what Phoenix is doing for us. And we actually have an IGA in place with Carefree. There's an interconnect site that they can request water from us. We have to set the rate for them. So that's a common factor.
Yeah.
Or, physically, yeah, they're in a situation where the groundwater aquifer below the Desert Hills customers is stressed. We have seen that in the well capacity. The well capacity has decreased by 50% since we bought the system out there. We've had to reduce our wells, and that's partly just the aquifers, the number of exempt wells that have been drilled in and around the Desert Hills area that are all straws in the same aquifer drawing that water off, which is restricting us.
So
And that's what drove us to the 2021 conclusion that we're not required to support growth out there because they're a groundwater based system, and we can't verify there's groundwater to improve there's groundwater to get them continue to grow.
So it's a private utility company that's looking at, that's not like the city of Phoenix, right? That
Right.
could it?
Well, at this point, it's an invitation for bidders.
The city of Phoenix could elect to say,
Yeah,
Well, we're gonna add-
they're looking at my IFBs. I was actually going to send a note to the Phoenix director just to have a conversation with them. So, but at this point,
close already, correct?
pardon?
They are.
Their water, they have
7,000.
water close to the Desert Hills.
They're very close, and we actually looked at, and ironically, we looked at the master plan. If you're not familiar with the Phoenix system, if you go down State Road 74, as you go past 7th Avenue, you go up over the hill, they actually have a Phoenix. There's a reservoir up there. They call it their Tremonti
Yeah.
Reservoir.
There has water.
Yeah. They send water across the park, but that reservoir is actually getting fed from their Lake Pleasant water treatment plant. It comes across.
Hydrate and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So in 2007, the master plan actually looked at the town making a connection to Phoenix at that reservoir site and bringing it along Carefree Highway, feeding Desert Hills, and then coming across. And then
No, but
the reason we went to the site that we chose now is because by bringing it in, the Phoenix water system is at a lower pressure, so we'd actually have to boost it up to get benefit of it. It feeds Desert Hills. It's close to Desert Hills and hydraulic grade line, what we call it, so we'd have to do a little bit of a boost. But it's too low to get into our zone 1, which is our main system along Carefree and Carefree Highway and Cape Creek. So we'd have to actually put a booster station in. The 2007 project looked at doing that. It came up with an $8.6 million scope of work in 2007 in the master plan to do that connection. We elected recently to do the connection on Carefree Road and Carefree Highway because we had the site, we identified the site, and we took benefit of the fact that in 2010, the town actually built a 16-inch pipeline at Cape Creek Road. It allows us to move water up north. And then by putting the site where it is currently with 2 sets of booster pumps, there's one's called a Zone 4 booster. We can boost that water north, and we can actually benefit all the customers in Cave Creek as well as feeding out to Desert Hill. That's what drove us to the site that we're at now. But that actually is in the master plan. If you look at it, the second connection to Phoenix at the idea of that Tremonto, they call it the 7B reservoir, it's the Tremonto reservoir. I still see some valid use in that. Now we got the mix of, well, if we keep Desert Hills, that makes sense. If we don't, because we don't have Desert Hills to bring that water into, then it's at least 5 miles, closer to 7 miles to get that water into Cape Creek. So that's a big project. And, would that be something that we could, and one of my thoughts with Phoenix is just ask the question, would doing a joint project along Carefree Highway benefit the Phoenix system because they could actually join their water systems together? If you're not aware of it, City of Phoenix, when they built their Lake Pleasant treatment plant, which is a really nice facility, they built it about 15 years ago, if not longer. They complete operation. They did a design, build, operate. So while Phoenix paid for that, they weren't operating it until just this year. They've now actually stopped that operational contract and now actually have staffed it up with their own staff and are it themselves. So they're looking at that as a potential for tying together, and I think they want to get more beneficial use out of it. It's an 80 million gallon a day facility that currently was only running, last thing I was told was about half capacity, about 40 million gallons capacity. So they've got 40 million gallons less, and it can grow. It's actually master planned to be much bigger. I've heard at least you could grow up to 320 if they wanted to make it that large of a system. So does Phoenix now want to leverage that? So can we say, hey, can we do a joint project along Carefree Highway that we're a small participant and we'll just peel off some water where it benefits our system. So
Well-
that's the thought process.
Well, one thought though is that Desert Hills is not incorporated with a Phoenix zip code, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
You know, and if, I don't know what Phoenix intends to do, but if they were to annex Desert Hills, that would be a justification to roll it into their whole water system, you know, and that might be a easier way to segue, you know, into water assuredness. If Phoenix is supplying water, they're prohibited from making a profit on it. If you go to an EPCOR or somebody else, they're going to mark it up and you're going to pay not only the cost of water, but a profit.
Right.
You know, so I would think in your best interest, you'd probably want to stay within, you know, some kind of a city supplied water system.
I think south of Carefree Highway around 14th Avenue, there's a housing development backing there. I believe they are a part of the city of Phoenix.
Yeah, so it's a little bit I know.
I don't know if they're served off of Desert Hills water.
Yeah, 14th Avenue. No, I think our last service connection in the avenues is 12th.
They're talking about kind of as you head towards the mountain,
Yeah.
that direction, that is the jurisdiction of Phoenix. I'm not sure who supplies the water though.
Yeah, we don't know too much about that side of it.
So you're going to talk to the city of Phoenix?
I'll reach out to them just to see. Again, we were asked to do a solicitation to see if there's a interest in a private company picking up.
Which
Prior-
would be EPCOR, right? What other one is out there?
Well, again, if a private one can come up and then they say they have water resources and they say, okay, Cape Creek, we want you to treat and deliver it to us and continue this operation, but we're going to give you the water resources. So we get our water resources back and they're going to give us a new pot of water. Eventually,
Wow.
we don't know.
Who has water resources? Hey, you know,
You know, there's a thought that some private water companies have some that might be available that we don't know until we put it out there and to see. But it's really, the real gist was, you know, we're facing this issue with Harkehala. If we divested ourselves of the Desert Hills side of the system and we don't have to send that 560 acre feet to Desert Hills, that comes back on our side of the portfolio again. That means we don't need to make a decision till later. So that helps us right now. And then maybe we need that 500 acre feet later. But there are discussions on, you know, is the water going to get any cheaper or is it just going to get more expensive? So it's just, and that's actually conversations I've had with Queen Creek and Buckeye. And one of the reasons that they made their purchases last year, that they were in discussions about this saying neither of those agencies thought the water was getting cheaper and they thought it was best to jump in at the phase one of the project. So there's a lot of issues unknown, but so we've issued an IFB.
and when's the time frame on that?
Yeah, so it was issued. We actually have a pre-bid meeting next week, so it's offered up to anybody who's solicited to it to come down. We'll actually give them a presentation and allow them to do site tours. And then to right now, I think it's January 16th is when the proposals are due.
Okay.
And then I have a question, Nancy. Are you going to put an IFP out for the Cave Creek water? Because that was brought up by, I think it was Joe, somebody on the council. You know, why don't we sell Cave Creek?
It's been brought up by, I know Councilman Rogton's brought it up a few times. And then what being done right now is the idea of, and that's partly being driven by the fact that could a private water company run the system more efficiently because they could wrap the 5,000 customers or 4,500 customers we currently have in both systems into their operations and be more efficient. I think that was driving it. It's partly coming out of the rate increases. Because of timing right now, the invitation for bidders is really just focused on Desert Hills. The scope of work we have tell us is that could be modified at a later date. It really requires council direction at the end of the bidding process.
Okay.
A couple of things working on, during the bidding process, I mentioned again, we have to do an appraisal.
Yep.
Because we can't sell the system for less than the appraised value. And then
Right.
other nuance of state statute is that if the project, the value is over $15 million, that should actually be authorized by voters. So
Okay.
So we have to,
Creekers to go to the private.
yeah. So we have to, that's something that has to be considered too. Is that again, it's not just a council decision. It's under $15 million. The council can make an action, but I don't think the council will just make an action on their own. And then the other thing that's also happening. So we have three things. We have an IFB out. We're doing an appraisal, and we're actually also doing an assessment of the impacts to Cave Creek.
Right.
interconnected the systems, and the Desert Hills customers, well, again, we look at as a customer, we try to keep whole. They're helping participate and pay for improvements in the Cave Creek water system that actually help make the Cave Creek water system better. We've tied that together. So what happens when we lose that? When we lose that bulk water sale of purchase to Desert Hills, what's the
Well, yeah, but then you have to, there's a lot of analysis that needs to be done, because then you're looking at your numbers on acre feet, future. There's a lot to that, as you know, just because initially you might look at that, but you're going to look at the water usage of what Cave Creek residents then would need in, in the future. So that's a very complex analysis.
national firm that we believe will be able to help us get to at least a point by the times our bids are due. We'll bring this all together.
Okay. Okay, good.
Certainly, we made everybody aware of that when we went into this, that it's not just about getting back 560 acre feet of water. That's sort of been what the discussion has been since started before I got here about, do we sell Desert Hills? We didn't send water to them. The systems are intertwined. And the fact that, Cave Creek is right now just 2,500 customers. It was a few years ago, it was a different system because we were over 3,000 customers because we had the 500 free customers. There was now gone. So, in 2022, that was actually drove the update to the rate model in 2022. In 2020, we didn't know what the outcome of the carefree separation was, but
Right.
it because the separation, the mediation arbitration was completed in 21. We knew that we were going to lose those customers, and we had to deal with that. So that was really what drove the 22 rate study. This current one is being driven by the fact that, rates have gone up, our costs have gone up. There's been goals of trying to get the enterprise fund self-funding. We need to have more clarity on the capital program, and that's the update we're in right now. I think we're gonna have to go right into a next rate study and an impact fee study, but part of that is getting the clarity on what is it going to cost for water resources. So we've got a whole bunch of information, and we need to distill it down. The IFB is one piece of that. And council has not made a decision. They've asked us to get that. And the question is, what's the harm in asking? Is it worth it? Is someone going to say, right now, the rates for the Desert Hills customers, the 1,900 Desert Hills customers, it's generating about $4 million in revenue a year. You look that out. Is it worth somebody to go purchase water resources or house water resources that can make that work, knowing that they have a rate structure in place? They would then have to go to the Corporation Commission. If it becomes private sale, right now the town sets the rates for Cave Creek and Desert Hills customers through our rate setting process. If it goes to a private sector, then that goes through the Corporation Commission. So that's a whole new game of fish. They have to then prove that out. But if they're starting with our rates, will it go up or down? I'm not sure. That becomes something of uncertainty. We've asked in part of the solicitation, and you can download it off our website. So you asked to say you could give some clarity on what the rates would be for the next, for the first 5 years, I think is what we put in there, because we can't control it. But we've asked to have them give some ideas if they think they need to raise them or if they think they can lower them. So that's part of the decision process. The council's not just going in saying, we want to get rid of Desert Hills. They're going in, can we get rid of Desert Hills? And does that help the water resources? But then we have to look at the financial aspects too. So we're trying to gather a lot of information very quickly in order to help us make a decision on Harquahala.
You made the statement that if the asset was over $15 million, that you had to take a vote. If that's from my limited knowledge, my estimate of the Desert Hills water distribution system would be by far more than $15 million. But does that not apply to that system?
It's I think the two things are, there's the appraised value. So there's multiple ways to appraise a water system, as I'm learning right now. On because there's the appreciated cost. We actually gone through as ironically as part of our lead service line inventory, we went through and we have a very clean data set on Desert Hills of the age of all the pipes in there. We actually were able to pull that together. We actually have a good document inventory we're able to pull together, when they were all built. So we and you can do things like the appreciated cost less replacement cost type of value. There's a couple different ways to do the appraisal that we're discussing right now with the team as far as which means do we want to go and what number will you come up with. So that has to be done. And then I believe so that sets the limit of what we could sell it for, the bottom end. And then the upper end is, again, if someone comes in and says, no, we want to spend, we think it's worth $20 million because we're going to generate that revenue. If it goes over $15 million per state tax, it requires a vote. It cannot just be done by a council action. The council can't elect.
So a
itself.
vote of town of Cape Creek people?
Yeah, ironically, it's Cave Creek customers, the Cave Creek residents. Yeah. So, yeah. So we'll come to those hurdles. We know what the legal factors are, but we don't know. Again, is someone going to come in with a bid over $15 million and giving us our water resources back? I don't know. And that's part of we won't know until we're out in the market. Will everybody elect to say, no, we've seen under the covers, we're giving them all the information, the financials, we're getting them tours of the sites, we're getting them all the information, they can come back, and is no one going to bid on it? We don't know until the 16th, we won't know. There's been 2 firms that have picked up the proposal. We've reached out to a couple others just to say, hey, you see if there's interest. So we don't know. The 16th is a pre-proposal meeting. It's not mandatory. So we'll see who shows up, if some more show up. And then it's January 16th is when the proposals are due at this point, and we'll have that. The timing is really tight because, again, if you remember, I said, I think it was the 15th or 16th is when the decision on the Harquahala. The decision on Harquahala is that the earnest money, we lose the earnest money. We can't recover the $50,000 that we put down on earnest money. And then if we don't close after the 15th, we are effectively a default, and they're taking their earnest money back with them. So do we want to be in that situation? So it's coming together very close, a lot closer than I would have liked, but just timing wise, that's what's happening. Because
15 is going to be a hot day.
yeah, it's gonna be a crazy week. So it should be beginning of January. I'll be honest, you're gonna see a whole bunch of meetings go out. There's gonna be executive sessions and open sessions to talk about what's going on. We're taking this very seriously. I wish we had more time with the Harquahala decision. We entered into the NDA, and I'll keep going back to this, in the spring. They didn't give us a cost until the fall. And they're giving us a short time frame. So that's part of our decision process is that too short of a time frame for us to know what all the decision points are, not knowing what the ongoing cost is a huge one. It weighs on me. I don't know what they're going to charge. Are they going to want me to pay for it all up front, or the town to pay for it all up front to buy that 500 acre feet worth of capacity? We don't know. And until that gets presented to us, we don't know. So we're in that situation, and it's all coming together within an 8. So it's going to be a very stressful place. So we avoid town hall in my office that week, please, and in Sherry's office. We're going to lock the door and just.
John, on the Harquahala, would there be any possibility to horse trade some or all of our share of that after the deal is done?
That's been discussed, and I think what I've heard back from Michelle and Quathan is that because does that become a water resource and a tradable water resource, and we believe it would be allowed. So that's another thought. If we buy in now, there's a thought process right now that is water ever going to get cheaper? As that's the discussion I've actually had with Swap Bank Queen Creek, which helps them drive their decisions. If we buy this water, does it just become a commodity that we could sell off in the future to someone else? So if someone else participates in a common infrastructure or wants to go out and drill their own wells to get access to that water, we could sell that to them, and it becomes a commodity we have. Ironically, we'd be competing with the remaining phases of that project to put them to get up to their 80,000. But that has been looked at. We believe that we go and fit us there.
I don't see why not, because it's commingled with CAP, and you call it whatever you want, but I'm selling you how many acre feet of water, and where it comes from, it shouldn't really matter at that point, right?
Yeah.
We need to double check on that though, because I could have sworn we asked that question to Sherry, and I thought she said we couldn't. So just need to double check that legally.
On it, because we haven't seen the final sell documents.
Okay. Because I agree. I think that would make a big difference if you could do that and then turn around and, maybe not, we wouldn't have to deliver it anything. So
That is another thing that factors into this. There's a lot being considered, and I want to make sure that you guys are aware that it's not. It's very well considered and very well analyzed. Some of it's which been done via executive sessions, and some is covered under non-disclosure agreements. So I'm limited in what I can and can't say. And I always feel like I'm going overboard because I'm trying to think back of my head, have I gone too far here? But I want to, in full disclosure, I'm trying to keep you guys in that praise of everything. And taking a step back, we talked about the IP, and just going back to the original discussion. We've been working on a lot of resources since I've been here at the town. We've had a number of meetings talking about that. The master plan really helped us clarify some direction, and we've got a bunch of things in the hopper. The town needs to diversify our water portfolio is really what it's coming down to. we are 90+% dependent on our CAP allocation, and that now is being reduced. 10 years ago, that would have been people weren't really thinking about that, talking about it but now as the drought has continued, we're getting close to 30 years in this drought situation. And they know this since the original compact on the Colorado River back in the 1920s that it's been over allocated. They've known that for decades now. It has to come to a conclusion and something. And Arizona is going to have to deal with it. And again, the discussions of the basin states aren't going the best. That's all I know. What I've heard from the Department of Water Resources when we had the joint meeting with them, there's a bit of I hate to use the term, but a smear campaign going against Arizona in the upper basin states. Part of that is because, I look at it as the state has been good stewards of our water resources and has been taking the CAP allocation and recharging it. This is what we're doing right now. So in total, I talked about the Arizona Water Banking Authority. They have 4.4 million acre feet. In total, the state has about 14 million acre feet of stored water credits. The upper basin states are looking at that saying, you don't need water. You don't need water off the river. Just use your stored credits. So we're trying to say, well, wait a minute, time out. We were good stewards of our water and stored it for the rainy day, not for long-term contractual issues. And they're trying to bring it into the contractual discussions. So it's getting messy. And, we're dealing with, it's the Department of Interior who actually has to make the decision, and the Bureau of Reclamation specifically, and there is no Bureau of Reclamation secretary.
Right.
So, what's going to happen? What could go wrong? Yeah, if you're not familiar with
Arizona's guy who's going to possibly be.
Yeah, Ted Cook was being proposed. Ted Cook was the general manager of the Central Arizona Project for a number of years. He withdrew. I don't know the political term to say it. There was some thought that he could not see past his Arizona ties. I got to meet Ted Cook a few times. I know Councilmember Royer worked with Ted Cook for years, and anybody in the industry says that they thought that he would be honest to everybody, but it's political process,
Right.
So,
Well, thank you, Sean.
so yeah. So I've talked about it a lot, and I know and I do appreciate your guys' input. We've got a lot of things queued up with water resources. It is scary that we are facing this decision on Harquahala at the same time that this decision on I'd say got thrown into the mix, but the idea of Desert Hills. It was really, the decision was driven of, wait a minute, why do we have to buy 500 acre feet if we're sending 560 plus to another group of customers that are even in a municipality where a water company didn't have it? I don't know what the solution is. I'm not sure what's going to happen, whether someone will bid on that and whether we can get that water resources back. That's why we have the analysis going on financially. What's the impact to the overall systems? The last thing I want to do is, because we still have a pretty aggressive capital program that we need still to be working on in Cave Creek. One thought came up of, if we get rid of Desert Hills, then we can run the system on the Phoenix Interconnect. We actually can't. The 1,000 gallons a minute is not enough to meet the demands of the Cave Creek customers. So now I've got a situation that I still need to run a treatment plant. I still need to do all this other stuff. So I got to look some thoughts. So could we increase that flows? That's a discussion with Phoenix. There's always ongoing. We're not in this alone. While we're on the Blade Committee, the one thing I'm really happy with is that I've been going to these regional meetings for a couple of years now, and they know our plight. Other agencies are willing to help us, and they know that what we're dealing with. So we've got a lot of doors open for us, and I think we've got a lot of goodwill, and we've got a lot of good things like the IGAs in place for the West Valley cities to help us get access to our recharge credits. Our IGAs in place with Phoenix. I don't think people realize how significant that is that we have those in place. We were able to clean up a water service boundary at Carefree Highway. We overstepped got over our skis by sending water south of Carefree Highway, which was actually in a historic water service area for Phoenix. So it's even in our municipal area. So we got past that, and then we actually have a tie together with them. I wish it was a bigger tie, but then the IGA does allow for a second connection to Phoenix. That's something we should probably be looking at in more foresight, but we got to get past this hurdle in front of us, the decision on is Harquahala the best solution for the town at this time? And, is there an opportunity if we divest ourselves of the Desert Hills, what does that have the impact on us? And I'll be honest, it takes a lot of analysis, but the way I look at it, that's 40% of our customer base, providing they're paying for, because they're a little bit higher rates, just over 40% of our revenue stream. Can Cave Creek survive losing 40% of our revenue stream? So that's the analysis that has to be done. let alone the customers. You know, again, we treat them as our water customers. We don't differentiate. So I'll just be honest, and everybody on our staff, I think, will say the same thing. So this isn't a personal issue. That's real. This is a decision on the town. Can we afford? What can we afford to do? And the council has asked us to give them as much information as they can. And the thought of the Desert Hills, divesting in Desert Hills, and I know it's gone further at the DS, and I cannot say that because it's come from the DS through meetings. So it's just divesting of all the utilities. You know, why is the town in the utility business?
Right.
You know, the town has been in the utility business historically. It was 1993 that we actually made the purchase of the sewer company. And there was a vote just before that. I think it was 92 or 91 when the town residents voted on that we should buy the sewer company. So we bought the sewer company, did the sewer improvement district, completed that in 1990, built our first sewer plant. And then our 95, 2000, we'll complete all that work. And then in 2002, they went back to the voters and they authorized the town to buy the Cave Creek water system. They started discussions with the private water system at that time. And sorry, a little history here, because I've had to learn it myself. Couldn't come to terms with the water system. That water system then sold to another agency, Global Water, who owned it for a few years. And we had to start, and we went to another vote in 2005 to authorize more funds to complete the purchase. And then they started a condemnation action using those funds to purchase the system. At the same time, we're able to also secure the purchasing of Desert Hills. Desert Hills only cost the town, it's under 2.5. I think it was 2.2 was the actual settlement rate. So it didn't cost it, but they were trying to help Desert Hills out. And I've heard different political stories of what happened, but, you know, we got into the water business. So that there's a bit of history there. So that now we're at another inflection point for the town. We need to make some decisions, and it's really being forced by the water resource issue for the town is facing, and it's being driven by the Colorado River reallocation. So
At the time you bought Desert Hills, they were going through, they were having a lot of issues at that.
well, yeah, because they had started the emergency interconnect with Anthem prior to our purchasing it. So it had been in place. It actually was an agreement that had been put in place and then renewed at least once. I think it was a 6-month agreement that had been renewed a couple of times. So they had that emergency connection to Anthem put in place. And there was always an interconnect between Cave Creek and Desert Hills. It actually goes back to an agreement, I believe it was 1995, that the two agencies built the pipeline on Cloud Road. There was like gaps in the system over a mile. So they both participated and brought together to the interconnect site at 24th and Cloud. And that was supposed to be a bi-directional. I laugh because I've never seen anything flow the other way. But it was actually a bi-directional emergency connection point is how it was actually, the agreement was discussed and put together. But then again, Desert Hills grew off groundwater and they couldn't get it. You know, when the town bought the system, they had just a few years earlier had drilled 2 wells that came up almost effectively dry. So they were looking to improve the system off groundwater. I have records of one at Maddock and 7th Street that they drove. They had it permitted. They went through a 2-year permit process. They thought they were going to get 400 gallons a minute. They actually got the permit approved for 220. They drilled the well and they stopped testing when it failed at 34 gallons a minute because it couldn't sustain 34 gallons a minute. They had to walk away from that investment. And just before that, they had drilled a well down by Carefree Highway that came out very similar. So they could not get physical access to groundwater. So they had they got over their skis by signing off on certificates, by allowing connections and not having the secure water supplies. So they had to do an emergency connection to Anthem, and they were becoming very reliant on the connection to Cave Creek water at the time. So,
Johnny, change the subject. I had friends here, Diane Basley from the Desert Awareness Committee, and we wanted to do just under call to public, but I guess, Ronnie, you didn't understand what I had said. But she wanted to do a presentation. We met with Bo Larson about Cactus Charlie, and the Desert Awareness Committee would like to start a poster contest within the school district and have the kids come up with slogans for water conservation and so forth. I don't have all the details. Diane had them. You know how enthusiastic she is. We all love Cactus Charlie, and giving your son credit for them and everything, that's great. Bo was 100% behind us going ahead with it. And whatever Diane's going to present to the school system, she would come and bring to Bo, and Bo would act as the town's liaison and whatever. So we're looking at, some for the elementary school, some middle school, some for different high schools. And then down the road, maybe we can have some Cactus Charlie signs with the kids' slogans and stuff on. So they can get creative and they can get involved with helping promote and preserve. Everybody knows that we found in the past, we used to go into every fourth grade class and the kids were just soaking it up and they wanted to teach their parents not to take long showers and not to think not to do that, be on top of things and so forth. So we think that it'll generate enthusiasm and the kids will help teach their parents on going forward with it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you need the bad news is Diane's leaving town for 6 weeks tomorrow.
Okay.
So
Sorry, Lynn. Yeah.
that
I probably should have got it on the agenda.
Yeah.
If I would have known.
yeah.
Yeah, we really should discuss
but-
it further. We probably should emphasize it to me and I actually,
She can come back once we get it. But what she needs permission to do now is the reason we feel the schools, even though they are outside of Cave Creek, water district and Desert Hill, that's very important. And maybe we should be going over to, what is it?
like the elementary school out there on 7th.
I don't know if you're still going to be part of the water system.
We are.
Water,
You're not like that.
but
Like, yeah.
Well, that's a wonderful idea then. And I think I can speak on behalf of all of us and encourage you,
go ahead. And then
And-
another meeting after mid-January, probably after the 15th. And then
Yeah.
I'll leave. That's okay.
And we can coordinate with Bo as far as, the physical representations in banners, forms, or posters, or
Yeah.
in the paper.
He met with us and was very enthusiastic. And
Great.
he said, I didn't know anything about this. I didn't know. And I said, well, that's where Cactus Charlie came from that lame, what was it, a kit box that doesn't use any box. Just didn't cut it with us, but Cactus Charlie does.
Yeah. Well, I guess that brings the point is we got future next item. I said future agenda items and
That's on the agenda today. So
yeah.
we want to set a date and maybe some topics or something.
But I would say to call to the public because I had a neighbor that was sitting there
Oh, okay.
and tears in her eyes with the cost of things going on and problems that she's having. And I told her to call Ryan tomorrow and she's got some problems. But the main thing is she just can't afford. People can't afford what these rates are doing. And they forced her to put a sewer in and
Please have her call me.
yeah.
I'll talk to her.
Yeah,
Her.
yeah,
Cool.
and figure out the system.
Touch base on that.
Yeah. So call to the public might be nice.
Okay.
Again, we call it both. We can take information we're making out the digest and come back and we can't really discuss it at that meeting, but at least it gives public an idea and we can hear from the public what they're interested in and the committee actually hearing about moving forward with. So
So tell Diane to go forward.
yeah, actually, well, just from side note, I actually had a conversation with Bo just yesterday,
Yeah.
talking all about that, and I know side jogger was just we do have the money put together in this year's budget. We're struggling with some staff resources issues. If you are not aware that Nick Larson left, so I think the term in the newspaper is aptly put, he's poached to Carefree Water Company. So he's doing over there. So we wish him well, but again, he was doing a lot for us, and now we're down, and we've been trying to hire a couple of new positions that have been successful. So we've got some new candidates in, so hopefully we can start restaffing up. But we do have some money this year to start the outreach and education program. That's what we were discussing with Bo just yesterday. Find out what to do.
These are very
Yeah.
minimal
Yeah.
expenses. It's just
Yeah.
authorization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to see if the town can participate financially. So that's another thing to back it. That's what I was talking about doing a solicitation to allow for that and sort of multi-phased effort to get stuff out. So I was going to actually draft something up, and that's something probably off the next agenda. So it's going to start a solicitation, we call it request for proposals for help us with the outreach. We have the Cactus Charlie, but he's been doing a great job. But I saw sort of 3 phases where one is, firm could participate in all three, or just one. One was the outreach and education and continuing to do classes and general education. We can help participate and fund. Second would be to help with residential customers to have ongoing discussions with them to help reduce their water usage, and then do stuff the more so that we can do. We can tell them how to use our water system, but also go on and actually be able to have set times where they can go and talk to customers on their property and walk that. The third was actually more commercial based. The town we rely on our commercial businesses. And I'm cautious of the fact that when we're changing the rates, and especially changing the top tier from 50 down to 40, that will impact some of the town's larger businesses. And how is that going to be? So I think in fairness, it's nice for us if we can have someone who has a commercial bent to be able to go into these businesses. And now that we've got the metering data to take a look at that and to help them look at how to be more efficient and cost effective. And then within those realms, is there an opportunity within the funds that are available to us to set aside some money for some grants? And then whether that would come back to the committee and we do something like the neighborhood grant program, where we'd say, okay, we have $20,000. What's the best way for us to spend the money next year? That type of stuff. So I think we can do a call. I'll look at someone later raising their hand. Yeah, I'm going to, as I said, the chairman, do you want to have some questions? I'm going to discuss it. Yeah, I don't think the problem. It was just asking questions.
David Phelps here. Thanks for allowing me to speak. One of the things I've been reading over and over again, and this is a classic, it's the Prospector Canal, which is a direct mail piece by the town. And it's kind of clear here that the town is giving the information that provided pertaining to the Harquahala is a done deal. But it's not a done deal until after we do further confirmation investigation. And I think it was disclosed here, and I appreciate it. The questions I have regarding the Harquahala was, you talked about the 2-mile gap to the CSP canal. Could you have any more, can you speak to that anymore? Where is it a 2-mile gap from the town's own property to the CAP?
Yeah, I guess trying to relay what the property itself that comprises the Harquahala Landowners Association, which is where we're buying part of. There's a gap from the north end of that property to the CAP canal. The property is located south of the I-10, so there has to be a crossing under the I-10, and then it has to jog north and then cross. So they've actually mapped all of that. They know which property agencies they need to deal with. It's mostly federal or Maricopa County flood control land, so they have to cross. So they have to work.
So that's the 2-mile gap. It's not actually 2 miles from from property that we're looking to purchase.
No,
the CAP.
No, our property is actually down south. I should probably bring a map in next to it. So
507th Avenue and Lower.
Yeah, they created a subdivision effectively. It's in the phase 1 of the project. It's actually a couple of miles south of the north border. And I don't know why they chose that. They created a subdivision called Harquahala Acres, and we're buying a 1-acre lot in Harquahala Acres, but part of that lot gives us access to the water underneath the project.
Question on the NIA water. Does the town still have to place money to the CAP when it doesn't take the water allotment? Like, do we have to continue to hold that? What's that cost?
Yeah, so that's both for our M&I and our NIA subcontracts. Again, the way that those subcontracts are written is that we do have the two components. We have the capital costs, where we're paying to have that right and that capacity in the canal. So we're paying off the debt service on that. And so when we first got the NIA water, we actually had to pay off the back capital costs in order to get access to it. That was $600,000 that we had to pay off. We paid it off over a 5-year period. And then ongoing, even if they don't give us the water, we still actually have to pay a bill to them. And,
like a hold cost?
Yeah. It's effectively our infrastructure cost. So they have the water. And once the water available, then they charge us the delivery for that wet water delivery. And that's the pumping cost of moving the water in and out of the canal. But we have to pay for the portion, that share of the canal. And we do the same on our M&I. And that's been a discussion point of, with everybody reducing their subcontracts. It's like, well, wait a minute. So there's less water. It means the cost will actually go up. I mean, they have, it's a win-win. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So what kind of costs are we looking at for the NIA water? Because the NIA is exclusively the Desert Hills component.
Right? Yeah. Well, right now, it's the same cost as our M&I subcontract. The CAP charges the same cost per acre foot for capital and delivery costs for that water,
whether you get it or not.
Correct. Yeah, it's the same cost component. I forget what they are right now.
Yeah, it's like 289. The
They have a table and it breaks apart.
289,000 or 289
Dollars per acre foot.
dollar.
And I think that's like the capital cost, and then there's the delivery cost on top of it. So it's catching us, yeah.
Yeah.
Three and change is what we pay per acre foot delivered.
Okay.
So the last few years we're getting all delivered except
All right. And I'd like to address the development issue about pulling the water from the developers who have waited all this time to get to develop. So in 1986, an agreement was struck with the Cahaba Ranch owners at that point in time they created an agreement with King Creek Water Company at that time. That agreement was for 950 lots and parcels to provide water to the 950 lots. That agreement was 600 acre feet. By 2005, they had realized that they only wanted to develop the 200 and, we go back to another 1989 agreement wherein the water supply had been reduced to where the request for that subdivision was going to be 387 acre feet. Now they're paying the capital improvement cost of the CAP to Cave Creek to have this allocation made. So they spent money on this. So they're kind of vested in that water. When they finally did their downzoning to 230 residential dwelling lots, they only asked to use 124 acre feet, essentially gifting the town the remaining acre footage to the Cave Creek system. So it'd be very hard in my book to go back and say, oh yeah, now that you want it, you got to pay us for going out shopping for water that we set the Desert Hills. You see how complicated this gets, and who gets the water today, who's owed the water tomorrow. So I made the comment earlier, and I stand by that previous councils and management thought that it was a great idea to buy the Desert Hills because it created a regional water system. It started at Anthem. The connection with Anthem, I guess you've seen some of this information. And the town bought Desert Hills for about that $2.5 million purchase. They really thought they were going to get a connection with what's now Anthem. And they really thought that they were going to get water, potable water. And they were looking at signing an agreement that went until 2017 with a 10-year renewal. So we had it figured out. We just didn't quite have it figured out when American Water came back and said, oh yeah, we're not going to be able to do that.
and past 2010.
Now, since then, as Sean has said, there is a lot of water that is now able to be developed by the Anthem water treatment system because it's now owned by EPCOR. EPCOR serves thousands of people in Arizona, and they do it at a competitive cost. And I really think, to your point, Lynn, I think if Cave Creek voters knew that they could have basically the same potable water served to them by a private water company with stable water rates that were 30-40% lower than what we're predicting to do in the next 5 years, I think they'd take a second look at privatization. And in my mind, if you don't think privatization is a good idea, then where were you when we went into the privatization of the fire company? And where are you in the fact that we don't own the sheriff's office, that we contract that work out? We know as a small community that you can't be all things to all people. Sometimes it just doesn't pencil out. We don't have a garbage service in our town. There's a reason for that. We don't have the numbers to make it work. It's no different. Yes, private companies make money, but the beauty of some of these companies is they have consolidated rates, where in an expensive water system like Cave Creek's could be dollar averaged into lower rate bases, and they still make the profit they need to make for their companies. So I appreciate letting me speak, and
thanks for your work and thanks for your time. And
Thank you.
A lot to be pledged to net.
Any more comments from our group?
I have nothing.
schedule.
Well, I would like to just make one observation. You know, the act of voting on the privatization or change in the water business is a global deal to the entire Cave Creek population, of which there's a large portion that are not even on the system. And I know they have certain legal things to proceed with, you know, but an indicative vote by the water customers and by the Desert Hill people, if this is going to go forward, I think would be very helpful and beneficial to them to know that the majority of those end use customers are in favor of it. It might not be binding, it's just, you know, informational, but I think that, you know, we owe our users, you know, some input into this whole question.
Yeah, good comments. Again, at this point, we're really focused on getting the information to council to make an informed decision on what the next steps past that. We'll relay to the council that we've heard from you as advisory board that they think that the citizens should have more involvement. There will be some scheduled public hearings. There's some executive sessions after the 16th. So we're presenting some information to them, and then some coming up with some public meetings. So it's not like it's a done deal. Where it's been tasked with getting information to them. It stinks that we're doing it at the same time that Harquahala is done. And, you know, the sort of Harquahala precipitated it. It's, you know, just discussion of that.
Right.
The discussion of privatization of the utilities has been going with council for a couple of council members that have mentioned that several times. So, you know, could a private company be more cost effective at running the system because they can spread some of those fixed costs over a bigger pool of customers. You know, the irony is, you know, this, you know, you get factor in things like customer service and other things where they have enough people up here to deal with all the water leaks and service line leaks and everything else that we have up here. Will they do that? You know, how will they deal with that? The example, City of Phoenix, I don't sort of one of us, but they had, you know, some people remember there was a water leak in front of Home Depot that the water leak ran for 2 or 3 months. And when we called Phoenix, they said, yeah, it's 25th on our list of things to do. So, you know, and we've been probably trying to be proactive about trying to do that, but there's that'd be a factor into it is customer service. How quickly can they get things done? Being part of a bigger organization doesn't always give you that because they're spreading the cost out and can their crews respond? So that's something to be factored into it. You know, that jurisdictional control, customer service, a lot of softer things that people need to realize.
Well, as we go forward, you know, I want you to know, you and Ryan to know that, you know, the Water Commission wants to do everything we can to support your guys' effort because, you know, you guys work your tails off.
Yep.
You know, but we like to be consulted because we may have ideas that you haven't thought about, you know, and that'll give the whole town, the whole process, you know, the best information going forward. You know, so hopefully we can make the right choices and do the best for the town and everybody involved.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, well, the next thing is the future meeting. We have one set for the 28th of January. We don't have any agenda. If you have any ideas now, we can start with that.
Well, we're going to talk about the proposal. Those proposals will be in, so we could add that.
Well, yeah, current business, I think that should, you know, whatever that direction goes, I think that should be something that we talk about. And I don't know how to describe that at this point, but based on the meetings and the feedback and everything that you've got, you know, we'd like to hear about that and discuss it.
Mm-hmm.
So anything else, guys?
Nope.
Well, and then of course we'll get an update on the Harquahala, maybe.
Decision there's actually one of the agenda items, so I think it's the 15th or 16th. This council discussed.
We'll have that.
There's a go decision, and that really is the, you know, right now the town's risk is $50,000 and being considered in default of this contract. So, you know, do we want to move forward? If we go past dates and get it 15th, 16th, yeah, let's get that. Then we release the $50,000, and yeah, we're sort of cancel the contract in bad faith. Certain callback. it's kind of a weird contractual relationship when Michelle explained to us, like, yeah, that looks great. That does.
So what date was it in January?
The 28th. So
Okay.
take, a
Can,
mo-
this is Nancy. Can we add on there for the next rate increase to consider the different levels that we recommended? I don't want that to die. I think that should be actually discussed at every one of our meetings so that when they do the next one, which they could do one next year, still a second one in 2025 or 2026, sorry.
okay, so we have, one item is basically Sean and Ryan giving a summary of, where we've gotten through the month of January. And the second item, it's, discussing rate tiers,
Right.
how we
Thank
might
you.
those in the future.
So
Correct.
that whole dynamic could change based on everything that occurs
Sure can.
next month.
That I invest with the English with presentation.
They're available.
The 28th.
So that,
Hasn't found me to
January. And I was talking to Bo about it, I'm not sure if the has a good time to be on it, because we'll get up for the review. Yeah, it's just as solicitation on the idea of the outreach owning contractual provider of the more conservation movement. And I'd like to get something out. So I might have to do it. If we do it wait till 28th, and he's allowed to issue until February, which means we're not going to go back to March, which we did this, but I think this year be off to see that, but like, I should have been circulate outside of the meeting.
Yeah,
Not in the comments.
you could.
We sure could, and we just, we definitely, you guys give individual comments back to us, you can send them back to the group.
Right. Not a feedback on it or collect the basic.
Let's avoid 2 months.
All right, motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Um,
Aye.